Thank you, everybody. I welcome you to today's council meeting. We have had a council meeting this morning, so the council prayer has been done. In terms of the public forum, I don't have one. I have apologies from Councillor Piki-Ora. I have Councillor Lambert on Zoom. I think other than that, we're all here. Would somebody like to so move? Councillor Wilson moving, Councillor Carter seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
The order of business, conflict of interest declarations. This has been an interesting one. So I've had Councillor Carter coming to me to say that while he was away, he hasn't been part of hearing the submissions. And has he then conflicted in terms of approval of the long-term plan? My view is no. He has been here. He wasn't here when we heard the submissions, but effectively we have made council decisions on those submissions. So from that point of view, I have the view that he can be here and part of the approval process of the long-term plan. Are there any other conflicts of interest at this stage? And of course, you can declare them later if you wish. Thank you. I'll be moving in terms of the confirmation of order of business. The reports 10.1, the adoption of the long-term plan, rates resolution, and the audit opinion as part of that. And I'll welcome Fiona to can we just hold there just a second? Join us at the table if you like, Fiona. But we'll just deal with another first. Councillors, I have a presentation to make, and I'd like Councillor Carter, if you could come forward, please. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the right thing to do. We've had a current councillor being presented with the King's Service Medal. Well, as a councillor, I think that is a fantastic thing. And councillor, this is memento from us at council, recognising that feat and congratulating. Chance to have a think if you want to have something to say in just a second. But councillor has been a JP. He has done 50 years of service to Fens, a double gold star. That is quite a magnificent feat in itself, along with all of the other functions that he's had as a councillor, as a community member, serving on a number of committees. Absolutely appropriate, and I congratulate you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
I'm numbed. Volunteering. It's all about volunteering as far as I'm concerned. It's just a thing that's in my blood and the thing that I do, and I just can't stop doing it. So, thank you.
Well said. There will be another recognition to the person Rob, Taihape, member of the Taihape Fire Brigade, who has also been involved in Fire Brigade for a very long time, nearly a double gold star. I think he's done 46 years. And I'll make a presentation to them with his Fire Brigade. So hopefully he's not online hearing that, but he hasn't been left out at all. But those people being screened, it's absolutely important that they realise that he is being able to be recognised as well. Thank you. So we'll move on to 10.1, the adoption of the long-term plan 2024-2034. And Carol, are you going to take us through this?
Yes, I certainly can. And you've welcomed Fiona Elkington to the table. She's been our auditor, and we can pass over to her in a few minutes after we've just gone through some brief things on this document. you will notice there was an updated version last night put on the website and Big Tin Can, and that included the audit opinion and also an amendment we made to the rating types table to include, just to make it clear that there is differential in that table. It's, yeah, like we said in the report, it's been particularly challenging this year, and in particular around the late notice from NZTA of our change in funding. So Dave Warren and the team to reproduce those financials so we could meet today was no mean feat, that's for sure. We have got a resolution in there just asking if that I get delegated to make any small ongoing if there's spelling or formatting corrections. So if we do notice anything, you can raise them with me. And also the mayor's message was updated this week as well to allow for a more current situation in his report. But yeah, I'm happy to leave it there.
Before we get into questions and before I pass over to Fiona for comment around audit, can somebody will receive the reports, please? Thank you. Councillor Dalgety moving. Councillor Duncan seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. I'll take any questions around the reports first. We'll let you raise them, think about that. Fiona, would you like to make a comment on the?
So yeah, I'm pleased to be able to provide an unmodified opinion to council. There are two emphases of matter in the opinion, and this relates to the asset condition information because it just places a slightly higher risk in terms of prioritising of investment needs because the renewal profile is based on theoretical age. And the other one is around capital doability. You've got a very big program of work. A lot of it, the timing in the LTP is dependent on certain milestones happening, resource consents happening. So there's potential that things will fall behind and not meet schedule. So that just covers that, and it draws attention to those disclosures that are within the LTP itself. And then the other matter just in the opinion, which is specific to this LTP round, is just your CD wasn't audited, and so the opinion makes special mention that the opinion covers the LTP but doesn't cover the consultation document. So that's a little bit different to what would have happened in previous LTP rounds. And I just want to thank the staff at RDC for their assistance. The last couple of weeks have probably been a little bit trying after we sort of thought we were on a clean run to get to the end. And then we had the last minute curveball with the NZTA, which was a lot of changes and working through that and trying to set that up. So really appreciate the help getting that done. So.
Are you happy to take any questions? Questions, councillor Morn, please.
Just you mentioned the consultation document wasn't audited. Does that have any, what effect does that have?
That just means that we haven't gone back and looked at that information. We had done a lot of audit work over that information, but if you remember when you went and took your consultation document out to the public, we hadn't given an opinion over that document. So if there was something that was a mistake or anything in that information, we wouldn't necessarily have picked it up, given where we had got to with the work over the CD stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor Wilson and myself, councillor.
Thanks, Fiona. So just, I note you mentioned our capital works program, which you mentioned as being ambitious, I think was the word you used. I don't make any apologies for it because I think we should be ambitious. But do you have a recommendation, or are you working with staff as to how we can better manage that in our long-term plans going forward, or what?
Well,
what
I
would your
understand you're
suggestion
putting extra capability in to help manage that, but for some of the things that might hold up a capital works program, and probably the Martin to Bull centralisation one is one of the key ones, is around that resource consenting process and the work that you need to do to get that through, and that's probably an uncertain time frame. My understanding, once you get to the construction phase of things run relatively smoothly and on time, so it's just that adds that extra uncertainty, and so affects timing of projects and
Could I just go furthermore to that, if I may? So does that directly involve where we're allocating the fundings in our long-term plans? Is that what that indicates? The costings associated with it?
the costings associated with that will be less certain in that if the timing was moved with inflation and things, those costs would be higher. You're doing quite a good profile in your infrastructure plan where it actually gives you some confidence rating is around how confident you are of those costings and timings, and that makes a difference. It gives people a feel for the certainty around it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Loudon, I'll save mine till last.
Just regarding the council's primary uses of age-based information for forecasting towards renewals, have you made suggestions as to what other ways we can deal with that, or is that a standard process that most councils do?
So I understand that's also underway, and it's a matter of pulling that information together and analysing it, and then decide that, say, the condition of an asset that was supposed to last 20 years is actually still the same as to allow it to last for 20 years, and then based on the type of asset and the criticality of it, you might bring some work forward, and you might be able to delay the, say, renewal work where those assets are performing perhaps beyond the expected life. So it's something that Arno would be very versed in how to do. It's just a matter of getting that condition information through CTT work and things like that, which is underway. So it's just pulling it all together, and then next LTP, you should be able to clear that, I would think, if you put that work program.
It's a huge job for a small council. I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Question from me, as I understand it, there are a lot of councils not in position to be able to go to have their accounts, the year audited prior to the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
Is it true that that there are a huge number of councils that aren't in that?
There are a number. I don't know the exact number. I do know that there are a number of councils. So it's something that's been going passed around the office in terms of trying to find where councils are at, because there has been shifting of positions, and the NZTA information when it came out, the advice was we'd rather the councils got it right and delayed by a week or two than try and push to sign by the 30th. So some of them will have delayed due to that as well, no doubt.
And will that put them in a difficult rating position in the interim?
Yeah.
And the second question from me, thank you for the time that your team has spent with staff. Are there any other concerns that you're aware of?
LTPs are always a continuous improvement, so it's taking some learnings from that, and when we pull together our management report, it'll be trying to focus for the next one and go, hey, this is where you've got to, looking forward, this is perhaps the areas to concentrate on going forward. And that's generally around the strategy type area as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. The Chief Executive Staff, do you wish to make comment?
Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Sure.
I just want to thank you too, Fiona, for you and your team. I think it has, in all my experience, it's been one of the toughest ones. And you've mentioned some of the later things, but remember it was also waters going in or not going in. So there's been a whole drama around there. So I appreciate the work that you and your team have put in. I also appreciate, the way that that's been handled. It's not been an easy time, but you're always welcome to anywhere that I'm at, because it gives not only myself some surety, but the community that we serve. So appreciate that. And also to our own team, Carol leading the team, that it has been a mountain of work, and some of the people behind the scenes too have been burning some midnight oil or early morning oil, I think, but it takes some massive effort to get this across the line in the best of times. And for this particular LTP, I think the amount of work that's gone in is extraordinary. So I really appreciate that too. Thank you.
Thank you. I am happy to move recommendation 2 about the prudence to adopt a budget that's not balanced in years 1 to 5. So somebody can, if somebody could second that, then we open this up. Thank you, councillor Wong, seconding. Take any questions around that motion or recommendation first. We've been through this a number of times. Because we've been through it a number of times, I don't feel as though I have to speak to it. This is a position that is common to most councils. In fact, just about all councils when I talk to fellow mayors. And so I'm ready to put that to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 3, that the Mayor and Chief Executive sign the letter of representation for the audit of the long-term plan as requested by audit. This is a process one. Councillor Wilson moving. Thank you, Chair of Finance, Councillor Dalgety seconding. You wish to speak to it?
Not required, Your Worship.
Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. The next one, we get into the bigger ones here, that the long-term plan 2024-34, including the report from the council's auditor, be adopted in accordance with section 93 of the Local Government Act 2002. Just before we move on with that, that includes the altered letters that have been referred to. From me, that satisfies a very minor gap within the process. Any questions around this? This is effectively, councillors, where you approve all the budgets and the work plans for the year.
One question for Your Worship, does your comments about audit, does that need to be included in that resolution? Or are you comfortable that the fact that it's?
That as said.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy to move, looking for a seconder to that.
Second.
Councillor Wilson seconding. I've already spoken. Are there any other speakers? I'll put it to the vote. Thank you very much. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Recommendation 5, that the council adopts the rates resolution of 2024-2025. Would the Chair of Finance like to so move to open it up for discussion? That's you.
Sorry. Yes, I can move. Sorry.
I'm looking for a second to put that on the table. Councillor Duncan seconded. Do you wish to speak to it? I'll speak to this. I have gone back and matched the rates resolutions against the long-term plan. I'm comfortable with that, and having adopted the long-term plan earlier, I'm comfortable with doing this. Any councillor?
The reason why I was quite keen to second was 5.3 on page 81. At the top there, it says that in fact we're going to go out with a 1% lower, and I would be very surprised if there's any other council in the country that can say that. I know it's only 1%, but I think that's really, really nice little 5.3 there. And I think that our team's done a really good job. Thank you.
Any other speakers? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Recommendation 6, that the roading targeted rate not be reduced as a result of the amendments to the roading program. So this is, remember, there was a reduction in capital money out of NZTA. Sorry, I was struggling. Any questions around this that may wish to be directed at Mr. Arno Benedict? Any questions? Again, for those online, today is a formal day of adoption, but there's been a huge amount of work that's gone in behind these discussions. Somebody like to move?
Happy to move.
Looking for a seconder to that. Thank you. Councillor Alban seconding. Do you wish to speak to it?
Briefly, if I may, we're being a little bit bold here in signalling that we are still going to push on with our roading program. And as difficult it may seem in the environment, I think it signals that it's a large amount of our capital spend and we are committed to it. So I wish Arno and his team well to deliver, but it's we have to keep to delivering. So I think this is a prudent measure. So speaking in favour, of course.
I'll speak to this one as well. So I'm in favour of the motion. However, I am sure that this will be a discussion that comes back to council, because the chances of us having an emergency event are incredibly high. And with the reduction in emergency funding, that will be incredibly challenging to council. So I'm in favour of this, but there is a warning from me that that's the position that we've been placed in. Any other speakers? Right, a reply.
I just say I agree with your comments, Your Worship.
Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Recommendation 7 to give the group manager democracy and planning delegation to make minor corrections to the long-term plan prior to publication. There will be a checking process yet again, and there's bound to be some word, for example, if there was substantive change, it would need to come back to us. That is my understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm not anticipating many changes at all. It's just if there is a small typo or something that one of you has actually picked up, we'd rather just have the ability to make those minor amendments. That's all it would be.
And a substantive change would be one that would affect a rating position or a level of service. Any further questions? Councillor Duncan.
In my paper, just by the by, it says the deputy chief executive. Does that matter?
Sorry, we changed it in the order paper. It hasn't flowed through the minutes. It's on the same, it's the
Yes,
same person.
I understand.
But it should have been-
Does that give you the opportunity to ask yourself?
Yes. Further to that, can I just say congratulations on your change of title, and I'm very pleased to see it.
Well, yeah.
It was known and appointed through council prior to this. Councillor Dalgety, you have to move. Looking for a second, Councillor Duncan. That's a duo going here. You wish to speak to? Yeah, I Councillor Duncan here. Put the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much.
And I'll just make one final comment. Sorry, thank you. I just had been asked a question this morning and I meant to be covered it off when I introduced the report. And that is that the submitters, now that the long-term plan has been adopted, the submitters will get responses next week. The team have them all ready to go, just based on the adoption, and then they'll get their responses to everyone next week.
Thank you. And I echo the sentiments of the chief executive. The amount of work that staff have had to do, Carol heading this, but also the amount of work and preparation in terms of people like Arno that provides the raw data to be able to feed into this process is significant. And there's been a number of sleepless nights around those sorts of processes. So thank you very much for that. Fiona, you're welcome to stay if you wish, but we will understand.
No, I do have to go. We've got electricity company signing is at the 30th of June as well, so I've got another audit that luckily they can sign on the 1st of July.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your trips.
Thank you. We'll move through, councillors, to item 6, the confirmation of minutes. At 6.1, starting pages 5. Looking for alterations and corrections, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. Looking for any alterations or corrections? If not, I congratulate Kezia on the work, looking for a mover.
Happy to move.
Councillor Lawson moving, Councillor Rakawa seconding. Those in favour?
Like,
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Move to the 7.1, the follow-up actions from council meeting. And I'll take questions, please, around the current follow-up actions.
Perhaps I could start off by number one is that we have found a number of issues and we're with Portorino sign off. And so we are appointing a council officer to ensure that is carried out. And we're also working with the landowner to identify the status of some of the dirt that is still there that needs remedial action. So that is in progress. And we'll just continue reporting it back through here.
Thank you. Any furthers on 1, 2, or 3? 4 and 5?
Yeah, I've got an update on number 5 too. I have asked that this submission be made and I'm assured it's either being made today or early next week. So hopefully I'll be able to get that one signed over too.
6 and 7, this is the Otara Bridge and the Macron. Councillor.
Yeah, I'll take over Councillor Duncan's mantle on the Otara Bridge at the moment. I'm just reading in the update on our website that what do they call them? The hangers are having to be replaced. Well, originally when we first started on that bridge, they were testing some of the hangers to make sure that wasn't going to be the case. All the publicity was around the bridge opening on the 15th of May, and I think there was an expectation that it would go back up to the 30 or 40 tonne, which hasn't happened. And yeah, there just seems to be not a lot of information to us, to the people out there around the Otara Bridge area about exactly what's going on. And I just wondered if there's been any more recent update. It doesn't sound like that bridge will be open for heavy traffic for another year.
Staff, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Councillor Morn makes a good point. We've discussed this quite often. The lack of information sharing is due to a lack of information sharing with us as well.
Yes.
We're quite often behind behind the 8 ball as to what's happening. So that is something we're trying to improve on and trying to get more information out to the people that live close to the bridge that are affected the most. And equally to councillors so that you know what's going on if people ask you questions. As for the hangers and when we expect the bridge to be open, I think it's less time than that. But I would want to be certain what the date is before we publish anything. Otherwise, we're going to create the same expectation. And this time around, I'd rather be 100% certain that we got the right date before we start verbalizing. Otherwise, we're in the same position again.
Yeah, I guess the point is we thought the 15th of May
Yeah,
was going
so
to
did
be
we.
the end of the matter. It is dragging.
A question from me. The shared service is coming to an end at the end of this month. And will this project continue as a project underway, still to be completed by Manawatu District Council as the lead on this matter? Or does it change in any way with the changes shared service arrangement?
Really good question. It will remain with the MDC as the lead until the completion of the project. It is something also we need to pay attention to going forwards. We have different bridges, and we need to come up with a way that we would manage if anything happens to those bridges. And I think this is a point that His Worship's made quite a lot. I think it depends on who's got the heavier influence on the use of the bridge. In some bridges could be us, and some bridges could be MDC. But that's something for us to consider going forwards.
Thank you. Go Councillor Duncan, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Duncan.
My question is around the fact that, in fact, it's not the Manawatu District Council that's doing the work. It is a contracted company. And I think some of the problems that I understand are happening is that the communication to MDC is also a problem. When we are no longer in the shared services, is it not feasible to think that we could approach that company and say that we want direct reporting? I know that Manawatu are handling the contract as it is and the contractors, but as far as the reporting goes, how hard is it to copy in another email address to our CE?
Yeah, my only comment, that's, Anna and I have been talking about this MOU for the other bridges, because this will happen again, so when that transition happens, the only issue I have with that is you'll have two stories going out. You could have ours that was putting on our website, and their one will be different. So I do think there has to be one source of truth for each of that. Just how it happens at the moment is unsatisfactory. We get that. And any MOU that we develop going forward, that needs to be addressed, but I'm not sure having two reporting is the answer. But maybe they report one and you have a joint statement going out so that you've had an input into it to ensure that it's as up to date as you can. But I think you run a risk if you get information direct and you interpret it in one way and the others interpret it in another, and you've got two messages, which would create absolute bedlam.
Councillor Wilson.
I think the CE's partially answered my question, and I agree with your comments. But what I was going to ask is, Anna, you mentioned, we're behind the eight ball. How do we get in front of the eight ball? Because I think that's the bigger question. But I believe the CE's answered and is aware of what the issue is. So I'll accept that comment.
Thank you. 8, 9 and 10. Questions on last three. This is procurement policy and buses. Councillor Carter.
I'll get started. 9, regarding the bus lane. Any advances on what's happening with that? Regarding the monitoring of trucks?
Yep, Your Worship, I can give some, we have put more signage up. It's a little bit lower, so that's gone up. As for the software and the IT, how far they've got, I don't have that at the top of my head, but it's something I can follow up on the IT team and ask them how far they've gotten with it.
Because I'd like to add to the area rather than the bus lane, also the car park itself, as the trucks go in there, screw around and then park up for the night in the car park as well. So that could be lifting your car park area up with them screwing around with the truck and trailer. So that could be another concern that's going to happen in the near future. So that could be something else to have a look at.
It's happening now. I've
It's
already
happening now, it's
reported
happening all the time.
one company for doing exactly this.
Then while I've got the floor, item 10, any MOU found regarding the dumping of rubbish on the Rangitikei River with Horizons? Because I'm quite sure this is going to be brought up at next Bulls community meeting.
Yeah. So the existing MOU, it exists. It's just a really bad deal for us. And it's something that we need to rectify. That's really what we're after. So it exists and it will continue, but it's not good for us as an organization. So that really is the challenge, is to come up with one that works better for us, and to change it.
So with that MOU, is it that we are servicing the area or we aren't servicing the area?
So so what's in the MOU is the area belongs to Horizons, it's their responsibility, or what they ask us to do is to organize some other organization to clean it up, pay for it, and then claim the money back from them. So that's where the problem lies, we don't have the resource to do all of that.
Quite sure some contractors would be into that to do it.
Somebody needs to organize all of that, organize payment, that's where things get difficult.
I thought of them directly billing Horizons rather than billing us.
And that's what we have to fix in the MOU. So the way the MOU is set up, we're doing their job for them, and then they'll just pay us back. So it's not a good position for us as an organization, and what we're proposing in this discussion is to have a detailed look at it and try and fix it and make it more realistic. For us as a small council with very limited resources, that's just not achievable.
Any timeline on this happening? As it's been nearly 3 years now.
Yeah, and the challenge for us is priorities. And again, it's the same limited resource. At some point, we have to prioritize, we have no choice. It came up this morning with another issue as well, that Councillor Dalgety brought up. It is unfortunately the way it is for now. I'm hoping with the changes that we have and getting more staff in-house, that the situation will improve going forwards. But for where it is right now, that is the problem.
Cool. Thank you.
That Pina, one
No.
question.
No. Yeah.
Would somebody like to move the receipt of the follow-up actions? Thank you, councillor Duncan. Councillor Carter, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Moving to 8.1, the mayor's report. I'll take it obviously as read. However, there are 2 or 3 things I want to highlight. First of all, I attended the funeral of Jim Howard, councillor, this council table for, I think, 2 terms. And so it's fitting that we remember that, fitting that we also recognise that he was given a QSM for that role and 100 other roles that he had within the region. I attended, just a comment around the Tai Happy Gold Star. So I went up there the other day and attended David Collins' Gold Star. The significant thing to me was here's the 7th member of the Collins family to receive a Gold Star. So a Gold Star is 25 years of service to the fire service. And the first member of the family was awarded one in 1948. And there are now 7 of them. That is an amazing community effort and feat. And the 2 other things. The next one is the staff awards, the Matariki evening, fabulous evening. And I might pass the chief executive make comment. Do you wish to make any comment around the awards process?
Again, I had this much involvement, but I'm happy to take any credit, but from all of those involved, it was a fantastic evening, and there were quite a few comments about the councillor involvement with the table too. And so they certainly appreciated you being there and being a part of it. So personally, it's great to see the staff getting rewarded for the efforts that they do in the year. And I think some of the councillors were surprised at how many and how diverse we are. But you're a big organisation, you're a big business, and you've got a lot of really good staff. That's what it reflects. And I know you might think you're a small council, but in actual fact, in terms of business, there's not many businesses that have the breadth of issues that you deal with. So a number of different staff from different areas that you probably haven't been exposed to before. But all in all, yeah, it was a really enjoyable night. We appreciate your attendance as well. Thanks for that.
Well, Carrie, you don't
No.
make further comment. Neither of you want to recognise the principal awardees or anything?
I suppose it would be nice to just make mention, the outstanding, the Matariki Award was given to Leah Johnson. And that's been really well deserved. She's probably listening online because she's live streaming, but she's, a real star in the organisation. So, and I think when she was awarded that, I heard so many, well deserved from other members of the staff that actually know the work that she puts in. So it was great to recognise her in that respect. And also we mentioned Ben from Comms this morning, the work that he's done in bringing the engagement, lifting that for council is enormous. And it was good that, Raymond Timmins from the library, she's worked for us for many years, but lovely to actually give her that reward as well. Forget the others. Yes.
Leah makes, council staff and councillors' thoughts turn to life with graphics and does an amazing job of interpretation. So I was thrilled to see her be that place with that recognition.
I think the other thing from these awards are that the peers are nominating them, so it's not us having people that we're trying to reward, it's the peers who often are down in the, in the trenches doing the work that's recognising other people that they see as doing outstanding jobs. So it's, in my view, it's a really good philosophy of giving staff awards. So it's something that I appreciate.
Councillor Rakawa, do you wish to make?
Yeah, just a comment on the night. So I was privileged to be able to attend that night, along with a few other councillors. It was a wonderful night. Seeing the staff, actually finding out that there are some divisions I didn't even know about, like Ngapo, geez. And seeing them all just, seeing the staff there happy to, and the awards that were given out. And the people that were recognised, but even those that weren't, it looked like a whole big team affair because everyone congratulated everyone else. So it was a good night. I encourage all the rest of my colleagues to be at the next one, because it was just to acknowledge that the staff do a lot for us. I just want to acknowledge all of them too, and all the recipients and the ones that were nominated as well. Kia ora. That's a good night. Thank you.
I think the other thing, Your Worship, too, there wasn't just one category. They had, for each category, they had like 3 divisions. So it just represented like 3 people got a chance, and then they had an overall winner. So it was really good.
I'm going to pass the comment to Councillor Wong. So Councillor Wong sits on the Transport Committee held at Horizons, and I suspect that he may wish to make comment on to lead him around the reduction in budgets. Do you wish to make comment?
Yes, please. I've circulated the agenda from the meeting for all those interested. Of particular interest to me was what Manawatu has been doing with their bus service, which the Northern Ward has been trying to get some services, and they managed to get it presented to the Horizons Transport Committee at the last long-term plan, and included the budget, but it depends on the fire contribution from Waka Katahi, and they have been put on notice that it's going to be reduced. So on top of what we know from our roading, what to expect from our roading budget, the fire rate to be, that we don't expect what we used to have. So and I see on the news today that the Manawatu, the Palmerston North buses are also in danger of losing their funding because they're dependent on their fire contribution as well. So Councillor Dalgety has just informed me that Hunterville was also looking at a community bus service, and the funding is going to have to be from some alternative source, not through Horizons and not through council, because ratepayers are already being charged enough. So we're looking at alternative funding sources. And another interesting thing was the Ministry of Education School Transport, which is the buses provide a huge number of services to the school. And they were asking Horizons to, or the bus contributors to contribute to their services and take anything that they can, but they've got nothing to in return. So if you take anything that do anything for them, apart from paying the rates, they will not contribute to their resourcing. So, which is quite unfortunate because there's a lot of overlap which could well have actually been productive, but maybe at a later stage they may come to the game. Any questions? Or read my email. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I'll take any questions around my report, my engagements, or the LGNZ 4-monthly report, etc. Anything at all? Any questions, councillor Duncan?
I have got a couple of questions, but can I quickly also say about Jim Howard? He was a very present and positive member of our Horticultural Society in Taihape, which is about 70 years old. And Jim was amazing. He used to come up virtually every month, and his knowledge of garden and bush and exotic species was incredible. He was really fabulous. I have a very special wisteria in my garden that he gave me one day, and I call it Jim Howard and say hi to it every time I walk past. So he, really special man, and helped with reg and all sorts of things in Taihape. So he's really spread himself throughout the district.
And your questions?
Yes, my question is, page 30 of your report. Thank you for your report, another very comprehensive report. I'm just wondering where you say here, in my opinion, we must consult an opinion I will voice in submissions to Parliament, and this is around the principle, the water.
Section on page 30.
With a very top paragraph of page 30. And I'm just wondering how council can support that, because I believe we do support that. We've discussed that position before, and I'm just wondering if in fact there is anything further we can do as a council to support that when you take that to submission.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the process in terms of the 3 water process for this government. So the submission 2 was one that I submitted on the other day. This process means that effectively councils have to work regionally together and form effectively CCOs, but we have a year to submit a plan to government, which will go to internal affairs. Before it goes to internal affairs, it goes to this council for adoption, then goes to internal affairs, and there is no current enforcement as to what happens next. But my concerns are, first of all, that there is likely in the 3rd tranche of legislation that's still coming, that there will be a process where they say, you've adopted it at council, so it is now what will be. So there are several complications in my view that come out of this. First of all, there is no requirement to consult with your communities or iwi. And having said that, the legislation also refers to the fact that you need to have talked to your iwi, but how we do that is not determined. And then you will have a number of councils around the country that are looking at alternative options. So there is no requirement to say that you can't submit one plan or be part of one plan and be part of somebody else's plan. So you could get a council like, or for argument's sake, could say that they are going to go somewhere else or potentially go somewhere else, and you have that discussion. And then you have a discussion with Horizons, NEARS, etc. And then you could even have the thought, well, the end of the day, we might want to go alone. And so there's a whole series of options still on the table. And my fear is that some of that may be removed as an option by the third tranche of legislation. I believe personally, and this is about my opinion, I believe that we have a requirement to consult with our communities around Three Waters. And if you're part of a regional model, you can't consult without effectively putting out information on the other councils that are in your group. So there's a heck of a lot of water still to go under a variety of bridges before we can even be in position to understand this enough to bring to councils and then to bring to iwi and our communities for consideration.
Further question?
Mhm.
So at this stage, this conversation is in the realm of the CEs and mayors
Yes.
meetings
Yes.
within the district,
Yeah, so
the region.
there's a whole lot of collation of stuff that has to go on where we actually understand where each council sits within its LTPs, the amount of debt that would need to be serviced, all sorts of timing, and there's a matrix, if you like, or spreadsheets of finance information that needs to be gathered and understood first. Because if we jump in and go out to everybody without correct information, that would be very damaging. The chief executive, I'm sure, is cringing over what I've been saying, but may wish to correct or give his opinion. And I'll open the floor.
I don't think there's any correction needed, but one of my thrusts is trying to get the same information from all of the parties. So everybody's putting different information in. So when you might look at Rangitike's figures, they might look bad and lumpy. I think I've mentioned this before. So they're doing it over a 10-year program. And of course, one of our big ones comes in towards the end of the 10th year. So we look lumpy, and then you look to some of our neighbours who haven't actually got all of their stuff in the LTP because it's unaffordable. So they're looking okay. And then when you go out 25 years or longer, you get Palmerstons in there, and then there's a big lump. So in my view, some of that information has to be, I don't think you could say it was technically incorrect, but it's inconsistent that how it's being prepared. So until you get the consistency and you get it over a longer period, when you're talking about asset management, it's not over 10 years. So that varies out the lumps, but the initial work that Marianne and myself are seeing at the moment is actually the finances might not actually end up to be the driver. It's who wants to be working with who. Because in that playing field, once you get out over a period of time, everybody sort of levels out. And then it's what is the advantages of the partners that you're wanting to work with. And then how big do you want that to be? Do you then go to what was promoted previously by another government? It gets to those big ones, and then you get into a mix of the four, and then you're thinking, well, that's probably not what's being driven for either. So all I'm trying to do is because that's a political decision, all I'm trying to do is get in front of you information that is consistent across us all that you can then consider. But it's complex, and it is going to be, I think, more about who you're comfortable at work with and whether that leads to other things like sharing some experienced staff or sharing some plant or sharing stuff like that. And I think Steve sort of opened our eyes into saying, well, maybe there's opportunities of linking between the two organisations. And of course, although we've thought about that before, you're in deep in the actual weeds, and having somebody fresh come in has sort of opened some of those channels. So there's a lot of water under this bridge, and we still have to work with our iwi too as to how do they get into that mix. If you think of how many of those are in the region, how do you get them all in the same room and talk the same thing? So Andy's particular point about consultation, my fear with that is that everything's on such a fast track program. How do you this is so complex, with us trying to get our heads around it is a nightmare. Putting that out to the public in a short period of time, you're probably going to get 2 days. We've got submissions that we have to make by Monday, arriving today. You know, so truncate that down, you get a complex thing. Even if you've got 2 weeks, you're not going to be able to understand it. So that's more my fear, is even if you get into the consultation, what information are you giving your constituents to evaluate it? Anyway,
For me, that submission was 6 hours work to try and understand. There's a number of bodies of work here. One body is the chief executives have been working on, is understanding the matrix of cost. There's another body of work that has to understand where the legislation is going, what future legislation will put in place, and the changes that brings. And then there's another huge body of work. The moment you start to go out for consultation on some form of CCO, communities and councils will immediately say, excuse me, sir, where do I get my vote at the table in terms of the governance arm, as opposed to the operational arm, the CCO. And there cannot be room for huge numbers of people at that governance table. So you're not going to get representation, in my view, from each iwi. You're not going to get, each council might get a councillor or a mayor at the table. But that's a huge body of work in itself to understand, because that will be the question that is asked by communities around, how do you have your say as an owner of the asset or part owner of the asset? It's a tricky space. Councillor Dalgety.
I'd like to ask both individually. So we've got a year's time frame to get this plan together. Do you feel we're on track to do that at this stage?
No, and part of my submission was that and Mr. Hodder gave some time input into this process as well. But part of my submission was that the timeframe's not adequate. And to be able to put all this together and lock it down and go through a consultation process, if you want, that's what you want, that consultation in itself would probably have to be part of an annual plan document. So that's going to take you out to this time next year, just in that process alone.
having seen the track record of what we're dealing with on a daily basis, get a submission in today that we've got to have an answer by tomorrow. To me, we just have to be ready because it's going to be driven. So you can pull the anchor, but the actual boat's gone. So you've got to be. We've got to be in a position that you can give your best effort. So it's how you concentrate on that as to whether you make more about the relationships or whether you argue about the dollars. And if the government continues to work at pace and thinking that in another 12 months you're coming up to another election, they'll be wanting to be on the knocker.
So I'll come to you in a second, Councillor. In terms of the legislation as it sits at the moment, so you submit your plan to council for adoption. It then goes to internal affairs. If internal affairs don't like it, essentially it goes to a type of commissioner role that can make the decisions and make suggestions. I suspect that will be an enforcement position. So the Chief Executive's quite right. You have to do this work within the time, because otherwise the risk is you will go here and you will go here, and this council will be part of your group, etc. Councillor Dowden.
Have you finished that topic? It's not a different topic.
Yeah.
I'd just like to acknowledge His Worship for going to bat on behalf of councillors on the remuneration scales that got released recently. You might not be aware, but Andy was cited on the national program at 8 o'clock on last Tuesday morning in the news, and was reported in local government reporting. going to bat for councillors, and applying all councillors around the country that the workload that we actually do is actually quite significant for the remuneration that we get. I, as one councillor, appreciated that. Can be shot out there.
Yeah, I made particular reference to, for instance, if you're a very large land area, and my councillors from the far north, from the remote far north, attending what could be a 2 or 3 hour meeting means they're writing off a day, effectively. And so the commitment's huge, but absolutely right, the amount of information that you're required to understand now, the level of decision, and the extra things that are being pushed onto local government from central government is vast. Any further questions? Otherwise, I move to the adoption of my report. Acceptance. I'll say no, sorry.
Sorry, I'll
Question?
second it, sorry.
You're seconding? Those in favour?
No.
Those against? Carried, thank you very much. I'll move the bouncing ball to the chief executive, which might bounce back to.
I'm going to change the title soon.
Thank you. I'll step through the report because there is a number of decisions and recommendations throughout the report. So I'm assuming there'll be no questions on number 2, and I think just, it's winter, so there's not as many things happening in our facilities at the moment. Staff movements, I just wanted to give an update that we have appointed a new communications manager, Sophia Sykes, and she'll start with us in the middle of August. So we had a high number of applications for this role and of excellent calibre, and they're coming from other organisations that have obviously had to make redundancies, so we were pretty spoilt for choice for that role.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Councillor Dalgety.
I wasn't quite fast enough, so just back to the event. I'm just aware that the rugby was held on Friday evening last, I believe, and there was an injury on the rugby field, and the ambulance couldn't get in. So I'm just wondering if that could be followed up, that a system can be arranged so that that doesn't happen.
We asked,
On Taihape, sorry.
we asked that question the other day, and we were told that there was always vehicular access into there because
My understanding was that the
I-
private vehicle had to get in to get the person who couldn't move out to the ambulance.
I can take car
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I absolutely asked that question, verification of it the other day, and I was given that that wasn't an issue there. Kevin will just.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to external submissions, and just a note there that echoes exactly what His Worship said in the Chief Executive, that we are receiving a massive number of consultations or things that we're expected to submit on. The one that the Chief Executive talked about before we got yesterday, that was implementing parking and towage. It's targeted consultation, and we had till Monday to give feedback, and noting that tomorrow's a public holiday. Johan did manage to provide the feedback to us, but it's just, you have to drop everything and do some of these if you want to be involved. And just on that, while we're on the consultation, so today Te Mata Arawai have published their suite of reports under the Water Services Act. And this provides the first ever consolidated view of drinking water across the country, as well as some commentary on the challenges facing our water and stormwater networks. So I can pass that through so you can have a look at it. Obviously, it's only open today, so staff have not been able to have a look at it at this stage. Just going through some of the submissions, so you'll note that we made the submission to the emergency works. There's comments there around the Martin Solar Farm.
Just on that one, I see due date 19th of June, but in the email, it was 1st of July. Is that on the paper that we're producing?
I'd go with the one that Katrina sent out, to be correct. They might have actually changed this, so I might have had an old date in here.
Can I just make a comment? So the staff quite often come to me, actually through Katrina, and look at the number of things that we could submit on and which ones we have the time and capacity and willingness to. You know, for instance, and they come with, you then might have to engage with two different groups. For instance, if you go to the granny flats one, which is probably one that we would want to have a limited view on, the consenting team may well have a very different perspective to the councillors and community. So councillors and community, for instance, could say, yeah, we want to have the scope to put a granny flat on, so you can house members of the whānau or grandma or whatever. But often these buildings, when they get put in place, there is no check on, and if there's no check process, welcoming, her ears must be burning. So if the granny fence one, from the staff point of view, may lead to people running an extension cord from their house and providing unsafe power, and there's no check system. So that one becomes important, you know, the national policy statements on fresh water management, you know, we should be in those spaces. You know, the Te Mana o Te Wai changes, that's probably one that our iwi would say, you've got to submit on that. So that's where the hierarchy of water use has changes, where has been put aside, set aside by the national government, etc. There's just so many of them, and we can't do them all. So you're better off leaving some of the very technical ones, like the changes within the RMA, to councils that have the resources to be able to put it and put your signature to their submission. Sorry. Being's the rave.
No, and the same applies to Tai Tuara. They often write really good submissions and will support, in particular, some views in those.
Yeah, and there's been a number where we've said, look, we submit in support of the LGNZ position.
If there's nothing else on those, we'll move to just, there's an update there on the lease at Bridge Street and Bulls. And also Calico Line, and if there's any questions on that one, Mr. Bernardi will be able to answer them.
Thank you, Carol. Anna, just correct me if I'm wrong. So Calico Line came to us as key decision LTP 3 years ago, correct? Budgeted amount $300,000. Just look at your 7A, it says preliminary design has been completed. But if I look at 7.2, last line with regards to the issue that's presented itself around the property boundaries, cost of moving and replacing the fences, including the project costs. That doesn't quite stack up to me somewhere along the line. How can if we've only just discovered that it's an issue, how can we have those included in the project costs, which are only $300,000 as stated? So, but I do note that in 7.3, staff will present a future report to council on this.
Perhaps I can take this one. It came to our attention from some of the property owners along there about they had been approached about the proposal and had some concern. They come and met me, Randy and myself, and it was felt that because we weren't owning that proposal, we didn't have a total understanding of what it looked like. We needed to just have a bit of a rethink. So some of it involves a wall which may be inside a boundary by less than half a metre. So therefore you would think that maybe it could be done outside of that. And there were other approaches by landowners as to how they had been consulted or produced a fait accompli. So what we agreed to do was put it on hold for the moment, have a look at it, so that we had a full understanding of what was actually being done and whether there was practical ways of avoiding some of the issues.
Yeah, just further, it's just that just mindful of the costs on this one. And if you're just going to stop and we're going to see a further report back on this, then I'm quite happy about that. But we have only got $300,000 in our budget, so I'm just raising that as a
Probably
little.
reduce that if you did something different.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
On that, I asked at the last council meeting with exactly this issue, and I, wonder if the minutes capture a lot of what we say sometimes, is I asked if that 300,000 was the budget and we within it, and the answer was yes, and that's where that, all that fencing and all that
It's within the budget.
re-establishment was included in the budget, and the budget would be on, the project would be at that $300,000 mark. That was the answer I got back.
And that's still our understanding. So nothing I'm saying, what I'm saying is that, again, it would be useful for you to know what's going to happen and for us to have had a look at that and see whether there's practical things that could have been altered. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Just a clarity there, so, in these situations, is council expected to build a wall if there was a wall there and, a wire fence, if it was a wire fence, or what is the expectation there, or the law?
Through you, Mr. Chair, normally what we do is we will not necessarily replace like for like, but put something in place that is acceptable. Because if you think of all the range of different things that you could have, it's impossible to do that. So we would put something that's acceptable for a farming setting or a residential setting or whatever case might be. So in this case, it will be a farm fence on the boundary.
Thank you.
If I could just, if I may, just make a comment on the budget. Originally, we have to come up with an engineer's estimate. We thought that's how much it would be. As you go along, we might encounter all kinds of challenges. They could alter things, but the bottom line is we would have to come back. If we're not going to make it in the $300,000, we would have to come back. That is not our decision, it's yours.
I think this is an example of one that when it moves from Arno's direct supervision in charge of roading to a third party that's developed the proposal and hasn't been around, don't exactly know what you're getting. So in terms of, normally that would be under Arno's control as to how they develop, so you would know. And if there were some issues coming forward, it would be before council, but that's all developed, has been developed outside of here. And it may prove to be appropriate. All we're saying is let's have a look at it and see what it looks like.
Councillor.
Yeah, absolutely agree, and thank you for that. But I just think, just on this report here, I think we should be mindful that the footpath on Calico Line is a part of an earlier decision to join up with a footpath on Ngātawa Road, which is a part of an earlier decision by council's thinking to create a loop as part of our shared walkway and path trails around the town. So that is the overall concept, is these two things are going to join together, and I still like the idea. I also am mindful that we've had some work ongoing on Ngātawa Road in conjunction with NZTA Waka Kotahi, which is, being as that's a heavy traffic bypass line. The continuing referral of this as a footpath to Ngātawa School is actually incorrect. And I think we need to be mindful, this is not a footpath for Ngātawa School. This is actually a part of a bigger decision made by council some years ago about our shared pathways and walkways and linking up areas of our town. So I just think it's two stages to this project, and I just think it should be considered for what it is in its entirety rather than singularly as what is in this report.
I think that you have to bear in mind also the fences that we say are not on the boundary may have been an agreed position with the landowner and the roading authority at the time to put them as to where they are. That is a very common practice. Cuts down on maintenance of the road reserve apart from anything else. But I would be disappointed to see if we had to move a stone structure or something like that, or a concrete structure by a metre to get compliance back to the original boundary. if there are other ways of achieving the end result, we should look at them. Anything further on that? Otherwise, I'll ask us to move on, please. No?
Okay, yes, and we provided an update on Taihibi Area School, which, we were alerted to this article on stuff. So we just, for context, just thought we would include that in this report. We haven't had anything direct on this for a long time.
No, except that I monthly check in with Mr. Bailey, he was here and there's no change.
Okay. Then update on the Cook's Wall, you'll notice that, we've put there that we're gonna bring some things for you to consider to a workshop, and that, meeting request was sent out to you earlier in the week for the 25th of July. So Jared will be bringing that through then. There's an update there on the Broadway High Street buildings. And also the shared services, so everything is, all sorted to take place from Monday, which has been great.
No, for sure.
Okay,
Sorry, no, councillor Duncan.
Just one thing about the shared services change, and I don't know whether it's appropriate to bring it up now, but I have had a bit of feedback from one of the water committees in the northern part, that they would have liked a bit more of a heads up around the fact that that was changing and the implications for that. I think the fact that Mr. Van Bussel was such an integral part for such a long time.
I could just warn you, please, about talking about individual staff.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying the staff member who's been involved has been involved for such a long time and has been such an integral part that, in fact, the committees that spoke to me about it were quite upset that that was changing without more notice. And I believe I actually did see something similar in another committee's minutes, which is why I thought it was worth bringing that back to us.
I think I'll note the sentiment, but I'll move on.
Yeah, I've had other people approach me around Huntington as well.
Okay, the delegations to positions policy, I think we've outlined there why we did an early review on this. And so if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them, but there is a recommendation 3 below asking you to approve the updated delegations to position policy.
Well, just before you do that, I'll step back to recommendation 1 that the report we received. Thank you, councillor Moore and councillor Carter. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, carried. Yep, do you want to highlight this further before?
Yes, so just recommendation 3, sorry, it's a bit out of sync 2 and 3.
This, would somebody happy to move that recommendation 3, forget about recommendation 2 for a second, approves the updated delegations policy? Councillor Carter, you happy to move? Councillor Dalgety, happy to second. Do you wish to speak to it? I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you.
In the next section, the last section is around the update on the schedule of fees and charges, and this was a notification from MB that the levy has been dropped since we did our adopted our fees and charges. So it's just prudent to make the change because it takes effect from 1 July. So it really is, it's a reduction. There's no impact on anyone here, but I think it's correct to show the correct section in our fees and charges schedule.
Any questions? No? Would somebody therefore like to move to recommendation 2? Councillor Carter, you moving? Councillor someone, Wong, seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you.
It's the end of the report. Unless there's any other question.
Any other questions on regards 14, 15, 16, etc.? Councillor Duncan.
Sorry, I'm just on, I'm a bit slow here. On page 78, under other fees, there we go. it really struck me that, and so this is fees and charges, so I'm backing up the truck, I'm sorry. But it says where paper copies are provided, a digital fee will be applied. And this really struck me as being a bit of a dinosaur, when these days digitization should be the norm, and paper actually is the exception.
That's what that says.
Is that what that says?
If you
No, it says when paper copies are provided.
Yeah, they've got to be digitalised. We require them to be digitalised.
We will require them to digitize it, to present to us. Yeah. Right, okay, got it, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the last recommendations. Unless there are further questions. Councillors, what I might do is change the order. I have a request, sorry. I'm gonna get serious growlings at the end of this. To go to the PMO report, because we've got people that need to leave the building for other reasons. So can we jump through to 11? So we're just skipping at the moment 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, and go to 11.1, page 103. Citizen and staff are here just like magic. Yeah. Thank you. Steve, can you hear us online?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Mayor. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, please go on. Thank you. Right, who's going to take us through this?
I will briefly, so you, it's, the project management office is still under my guise for another few weeks. So my name's on this report, but again, we felt it's really important that Ishwa and Peter attend these meetings, so that they can give you the detailed updates. Now, I know Steve wants to talk about some more highlights in each of these projects. So if you're happy, Steve can go through that, and I've included each project manager's name this time so you know who's dealing with which project.
Steve and staff, which one do you want me to start on?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, maybe the Martin Balls wastewater project. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, Steve, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. So some notes in the report there, but I just had some sort of enhancement comments to those. I'm pretty comfortable with where the project's at from a sort of overview governance sort of project director point of view. So just reporting on some status. Late May we had a meeting. The project team's well and truly mobilised. Late May we had a meeting where we put up and defined some, or at least confirmed some project objectives and some criteria upon which we would assess those options we come up with. Now, spitballing a number of different scenarios. At the moment, we've in the past few days developed what we're calling an ultra long list of about 40 options. So this is combinations of different discharge scenarios and different treatment plant arrangements and different treatment standards and different treatment processes. So you could imagine any statisticians in the room, once you multiply a 3 times a 4 times a 4, you can get to about 50 pretty quickly. So if there's 3 or 4 variables of each of those sorts of issues, you can easily generate sort of 50 options. So just in terms of the discharge scenarios we're looking at, because that's really what governs everything from a consenting point of view, but also largely from a cost point of view also. So we're looking at freshwater discharges. We're looking at land-based discharges, that is land application of treated effluent. We're looking at a hybrid or a mix of the two. We're looking at groundwater recharge, that is putting treated wastewater into the groundwater. And we're looking at ocean discharges. So, and the varying standards of wastewater treatment process would need to be applied for each of those discharge scenarios you could imagine. So, there's a couple of variables at the moment out there as well. Certainly from a regional perspective, what could potentially happen? Is there opportunity for a regional sort of solution or part solution here across current council boundaries? And also future proofing and sort of climate change sort of initiatives as well. So just in terms of the criteria we've come up with, I've seen these MCA processes go astray when they become way too complicated. So it's the old KISS principle, keeping it simple, stupid. So what we're trying to do is narrow that down to the fewest criteria we can, so we can play with the weightings and give the weightings more extreme values to really test the sensitivity of the criteria. Okay, so we've come up with 4 criteria that we're going to assess each of these options against, or at least in the first stage. The ultra long list will be reduced to what we'll call a long list of maybe 15 or so options, go from sort of 40 to 15 or so. Whether a pass, fail, yes, no, do they meet the project objectives, or could they meet the project objectives? And then the actual assessment criteria are centered around the concept of, believe it or not, number 1 is affordability. Number 2 is sort of cultural or Te Mana Oti sort of perspectives, and the 3 iwi representatives are key players in the tent in developing that and certainly assessing that, and we've got them on board with that, which is good. There's an environmental impact criteria, and there's what we're calling a future proofing criteria. So future proofing in this context is really, how does this fit within a foreseeable regional CCO's sort of remit, and also what's the sort of climate risk and climate change impacts of that. So that's the future proofing assessment criteria. So when we reduce the long list, which is 15 to 20 options, down to a short list, which we're hoping will be about 4 or 5, we'll be assessing these options against each of those criteria and playing around with weightings accordingly to test the sensitivity of those weightings. How much is affordability worth as a balance to, say, Te Mana Oti cultural values versus environmental values versus future proofing? So just in terms of the timeline, next week we're going to be reducing the ultra long list to the long list. So that's the 40 or so options to the 15 using the gateway assessment. And then over the next 2 months, we'll reduce the long list to a short list with some level of investigation and analysis of those long list options. That's why it's going to take sort of two or so months to do that. And we hope to have by mid-September a short list of maybe 3 to 5 sort of type preferred scenarios or preferred options. So that's the sort of summary of the process and where we're at. There's some tightening up being done at the moment of the consultancy contracts, given we're a bit more surety about where we're set up and who's on board, and particularly how council's management sort of structure of the project and my role in the project is playing out. And I've asked the consultants to tidy that up and get some more definition on specifics. I'm a little sceptical about how waffly some of the scope definitions that have been done thus far are. So I really want to hold their feet to the fire as to their scope and their responsibilities. So that's a sort of plotted summary. Oh, the other initiative that's potentially impacting on this project. Well, there's 2 others I want to just cover today. One is the whole idea of demand management and how big are the flows we're catering for at these new treatment plant or treatment facilities really need to be. So the options will be looking at a inflow infiltration management scenario whereby we're reducing the rainfall that's getting into a leaky sewer system in both Bulls and Martin. Okay, so there's a cost associated with that, which is really an asset renewal program. But is that cost, is that investment worth it, given how much it would reduce the treatment plant cost by? You know, I'm talking potentially 30-40% reduction in peak wet weather flows if you were to actually spend enough money on the network. And if that's whatever $1 million, do we get 2 times that, 3 times that, 4 times that saving in the capex of the treatment plant project? And then the second component is, be interested to hear the reaction of the room here. Sorry, I'll just kill that. The second component is what impact would domestic water metering program have on the wastewater flows that we're trying to deal with and treat here? Because every council that's implemented domestic metering has dropped not only their water demand by 20%, but also their wastewater production by 20% during dry weather. So if you're, I mean, the treatment plant's generally designed on the wet weather flow, but if you're looking at a land irrigation system, you're really doing that in dry weather. So following examples all around New Zealand where this has happened, if you can drop the wastewater demand by 20%, you'll probably pull 20% of the cost out of any land disposal scheme. So I think it's worth looking at the numbers, the relative numbers. Is that investment worth it in terms of the capex saving you get, not only for any water projects, but also the wastewater project?
Steve, that was an issue that I raised exactly the other day.
Yeah.
And government has signalled, or the minister has signalled, that we will be moving to water meters. And when the minister talks in that vein, they're probably going to look to legislate.
Yeah. Well, they're playing quite a heavy hand on that point, but it's only, I mean, it's a responsible management of the resource of the water, whether you call it a resource or an asset or a treasure, depending on what lens you're coming at from there. It is a far more responsible approach to it than what has been done in the past. And to be honest, I'm not sure why treatment plants in New Zealand upgrades aren't designed with that in mind. I just find it, anyway, whatever. So the other side initiative that's going on here, given need for consenting and consent compliance issues, improvement at the treatment plants at Taiapi and Mangaweka and Hunterville, I'm looking at the feasibility of a pipeline down from Taiapi to Martin. It's 74 kilometres long. The alternative in Taiapi is to try and do land disposal up there, but the topography and the climate doesn't really lend itself to that. And the amount council's got set aside in the LTP is comparable for what a gravity run pipeline all the way down the state, mainly the state highway corridor would entail. So if it's cost equivalent, then got to start looking at the sort of non-cost benefits of having one consenting regime for treatment plants across the district, and a lot simpler operating scenarios. So there's quite a bit going on in this space related to that project. Now, the impacts of that, whether that's a flyer or not, not only, well, I'm pretty sure it's technically feasible to do it and to run the whole thing by gravity if you use some of the railway corridor instead of some of the state highway corridor. There's a couple of large hills either side of Mangaweka, but I'm almost set that it's actually hydraulically feasible. Then it's culturally feasible. We've got to go through that scenario, but at least engineering wise, I'm almost convinced it's feasible from an engineering perspective, and cost wise equivalent to what's currently set aside in the budget for land disposal at Taiapi.
Steve, I've got a couple of councillors wanting to ask questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Councillor Duncan first, Councillor Loudon second. Councillor.
Steve, just with your first part around the wastewater treatment plant, sorry, Martin de Bulls wastewater central.
Yep.
That one. Can you, will that be reflected in the PMO reporting so that like the steps that you said from the super long list to the long list to the short list and September being a date, will that be somewhere that we can see going forward monthly?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was just a timing thing and an awareness thing. I mean, some of the thinking's been evolved probably since the council papers were put together, I think, with the agenda deadlines and stuff. So, that's certainly the intent going forward from here for sure.
Thank you. I do have another question, but it's further down.
No, take councillor Loudon next, then down to Dalgety councillor.
Thanks, Steve. Very good. I really like the way this is evolving with your work.
Thank you.
How you are evaluating Rangitaka's issues. Do you have knowledge of how our neighbouring councils are resolving theirs, and are we aligned? Just the bigger picture with the possibility of joining other districts.
There's a few angles on that, councillor. So not in any particular order. It is very difficult to pump untreated wastewater any substantial distance. So what that leads to is, whilst we, I'd be very surprised if there was any viability in pumping raw wastewater from Rangitikei district to another district. But I think there's merit in considering the viability of pumping treated effluent a longer distance, given, and now that might be to a land disposal scheme, it might be to a groundwater recharge scheme, or it might be to an ocean outfall. But given Palmerston North City and Rongonui district have in front of them right now, or about to have in front of them, consent renewal projects for their treatment plants, I think there's some merit in considering the viability of a regional discharge or disposal, depending on your take, whatever word you want to use, scenario there, because you can pump that effluent along the way. It's like raw water, if you like. It's quality. So the other side of it too is some sort of regional approach to sludge and biosolids management coming out of all these plants that are going on in the area. It's expensive kit, and the costs are better shared. And if there was a CCO in place, then it'd be under one umbrella anyway. So it would be silly for us at the moment, given what we foresee, not to consider these regional sort of implications. It would be totally sort of unprofessional from an advisor's point of view if we went to do that right now. There was another angle on that I was going to talk to.
Can I just add a comment? If I may, I think just it's important for councillors. We are fortunate with having Steve helping us out because he does work in Wanganui, and he's had some discussions with Palmerston North as well. So although these discussions are high level and quite superficial at the moment, with Steve across both of those, it really helps to start getting a bit of an idea of where our neighbours might be heading.
Yeah, I just want to be very careful that we can't be speaking on behalf of our neighbours' perspective. Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just interested in the weightings around affordability, cultural, environmental impact, future proofing.
Yeah.
How do you do that a little bit, please?
Yeah, no, look, that's a good question. I've seen these MCA processes. I mean, we're required by statute to go through this sort of process of these multi-criteria, best practicable option things, right? But if you have too many criteria, in these assessments, you have to give a certain amount of weighting from one to the other. And so you end up, it's a bit vanillaized, if I can use that phrase, if you have too many different criteria, because everything gets like 5 to 15% weighting if you're trying to divide 100 by 6 or 7 or 8 or something. So I was keen to cut it down to 3, but the project team sort of convinced me I wasn't on sure enough ground. So we're at 4. So, we would potentially apply, and the idea is that, it's all done spreadsheeting, and you can apply various weightings and scenario test various weightings and we call it a sensitivity test. So, you know, for instance, an affordability criteria could be anything from 10% to 90% of the weighting out of 100. If the right option, you know, the right option will score the best on a range of those sensitivity tests. And look, and there may be some decision made at some stage where we're setting upper and lower bounds to what each of those weightings are for each criteria, if that makes sense. So, you know, a particular criteria we might think is not so important, so it's got a narrow band as to what its upper and lower bound is in this analysis. But it's not a complex thing to do. It sounds complex, but you're just playing in a spreadsheet with numbers and just altering numbers at the top of the spreadsheet. So that's certainly the intent.
Steve, I think we get the gist of where you're at and heading, and the nods of appreciation around the room are quite significant. And knowing that this is going to come back to us in a couple of stages.
Yep.
I think we're fine unless there's a councillor with a real concern. No, the next section you wish.
Yeah. Oh, just one other point on Mountain Box. I'm just mindful of other consenting processes that have either have happened or are happening in the region, and I'm trying to do as much as we can to learn the lessons from those, either good or bad as well, so that we don't end up with adverse outcomes if we can avoid those based on seeing what's happening elsewhere in the region. We're doing everything we can to avoid that sort of circumstance. So the other parts, Mayor Andy, the other parts of the projects, just talking off memory here. So down at, I'll cover a smaller one first at Ratana. Appreciate there's a project in progress there. I'm just challenging people to think about an alternative at the moment. Once again, it's got a bit of a regional flavour to it. If we were to, instead of spending the amount that's reserved for that solution, we could spend a lot less by pumping that flow to the connection that Wanganui is putting in at Kaitoki Prison. There's some cultural issues to work through with iwi there potentially, crossing river catchment boundaries and things. But I think it'd be silly not to look at that, given there's potentially, 40-50% capital saving there, what I can gather at the moment. So just making people aware that as an alternative, and whilst there may be some pipe being, some materials being procured at the moment, given where the project's at, that's not like that material would go to waste in the solution that we're investigating at the moment.
Thank you.
Um,
Councillor Maughan?
Are those savings related to not having to put a treatment plant in there?
No, we'd potentially retain the treatment plant facility, but they're ponds, just oxidation ponds at the moment, but use those as a buffer storage and fill those and empty those maybe over a 24-hour cycle, and then pump that flow to the new facility. It's a pump station outside the prison boundaries, but adjacent to it at Kaitoki. I've had a couple of initial discussions with people at Whanganui District Council, and they're open to the idea. So yeah, I think we could pull half the cost out at the moment, the way it's looking, but it's a cultural thing about cross boundaries. And this alternative does then provide an option to potentially pick up. I understand there's some houses at Turakina Beach, and that are maybe worth thinking about whether we could connect those guys into the Ratana ponds and then push that over to Wanganui as well.
Right, I think we should move along.
Yep.
Any questions on this one? I think, Steve, the next one, while we've still got you on the line, is the Martin Water Strategy. I think that's one that will be of interest to councillors.
Sure. So, committee meeting a couple of weeks back, I showed initial photo. There's a pilot plant in there at the moment. So a pilot plant is like a trial plant done on a mini scale of the actual treatment process, which council is looking at procuring. So this pilot plant is now being run against real operating scenarios with initially the bore water from the Tutanui bore, and then we'll run it with the new bore water, and then a shandied, if we can use that phrase, shandied mix of the two waters. So the idea of a pilot plant, particularly with a technology like this, is to assess the calcium and magnesium hardness are the issues in this bore water. So we're trying to really prove that this technology will reduce the hardness down to what levels within the range of acceptability, but in doing so will incur what power costs, what chemical costs, what cleaning costs, what effect does it have on membranes, all these sorts of things. So out of the pilot plant, but real world testing it against the range of operating parameters it might see in reality, but to inform us as to what the sort of annual and long-term operating costs of such a facility might be. So that's the idea of the pilot plant. Now the pilot plant's in operation until about, I think it's the first week of August or second week of August is on the program at the moment. And then assuming that's all appropriate and there's no unforeseen sort of outcomes for that pilot plant process, the contractor then goes away and procures the full kit and commences with the installation of the full kit for the treatment plant. So
Any questions on that project?
Yes, I have one. In terms of the market and water strategy, we've got this pilot plant running, and council was assured that there would be a guarantee, so that if it doesn't work, there is a guarantee. What I would like to see down the track, I know it's a pilot program running, but what I'd like to understand is exactly what that guarantee will cover, and whether it covers, for instance, if the plant didn't work, obviously the guarantee would cover that we don't have to pay for it, but we could be involved in quite significant structural upgrades to the plant to be able to accommodate, and whether they would be covered some of our costs. So an understanding of that guarantee at some stage would need to be in there from my point of view.
Yeah, thanks, Marion. Yeah, it's a good point to make. And since my arrival on the scene, it's not unusual practice to put what we call process guarantees on technology like this. So in this case, there's a NZS 3916 contract that this contractor is we're finalising with them. Now there's a couple of facets to that. One is the performance guarantees, and I'll talk about that briefly, but shortly. But the second or the first component of that is having what we call, and this is a contractual mechanism within this NZS contract 3916 standard. You have what's called separable portions. So at the moment, we can award the contractor separable portion A, which covers only the pilot plant and his design for the full plant. So if his pilot plant comes up with some scenarios that we think, hang on, if due to outrageous operational costs or something like that, or there's too much waste stream being produced and we can't consent it, if there's some game breaker there, then council's risk exposure is minimised by the fact that we've only awarded the contractor the component of the contract that deals with the pilot plant and his design for that, not the actual major part of it from a financial point of view, which is the capex. So, and that award is then part of, and that scope is part of what we call separable portion B in the contract. And that's only then awarded to the contractor if we're comfortable at the end of the pilot plant process with the outcomes that the pilot plant has proved or disproved. Okay, so now assuming we're happy with everything and we go into separable portion B, then that's when these process guarantees are activated. So they will be stipulated in the contract relating to production rates, recovery rates. Appreciate with hardness, there's lots of calcification. So there's anti-scalant chemical consumptions, there's cleaning chemical consumption, power, and membrane life. You know, the significant cost of these membrane plants is the actual membranes themselves. So if it's such that the conditions are quite harsh, we don't want the membranes clapping out in 2 years' time and having a major capex in 2 years' time when we thought it might be 10 years away, which is what might be initially claimed. So that's what the process guarantees are about, and that's the financial liability and handcuff that we put on the contractor through those process guarantees, which should protect council's position for each of those operating parameters.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I think that by me raising it, it just puts it continually on the horizon.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor Andy. Yep. But that's quite a normal process for a normal contractual mechanism for a treatment process like this to have these performance guarantees in place, and also for a separable portion type contract. In my experience, I've done this before anyway.
Yeah. But while you're with us, because I know that you have to be away by 3, is there anything else that you wish to raise with us?
No, you probably heard enough from me already today, but that's all right. I could talk for hours about lots of things, but no, probably nothing at this at this meeting, Mayor Andy. So no, I appreciate it. Look, if there's any, it's I'm enjoying the work I'm doing here. It's quite intellectually challenging, technically good. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to provide that input to council. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, have you got a question and it needs to be brief, please?
Yes, very brief question, and it may not even be for Steve. Thank you, Steve. Amazing. I just going back to 3.4 in under the Taihape wastewater treatment plant membrane upgrade. It says there that the renewals to valves and controls have been required, a small number of them, and there was a recent unauthorised discharge in May where one of these control systems had failed. So it was a control system that you've obviously replacing them. It wasn't anything to do with a weather event or anything like that. It was just one of the controls that needed upgrading. Is that correct?
I wish I could comment intelligently on that one, Councillor. I know it might be a better place, or Peter or someone to answer that particular detail.
I know.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that's correct. It was just a piece of equipment that failed, and they have replaced that specific piece of equipment with something that's more suitable. So it shouldn't have any.
I hope it wasn't as significant as taking the bolts out. The thing falls over. Sorry, I shouldn't be flippant. Councillor Rakawa, please.
Kia ora, just Steve, kia ora, thank you for that. I want to go back to the Ratana waste management corridor that you gave. And just a question, that you found a cheaper solution for this issue that we're having at ACE. Forgive my ignorance. How long have you been talking to Whanganui about the solution? And when or if will you talk about engagement with the other committees like the Glasgow Community Board and the committee that they've set up?
Yeah, that's good. It's a good point. And a lot of this stuff's pretty fresh off the press, so to speak, Councillor. So just got to think through that strategy. I want to just really confirm in my mind.
Can I just stop you there a minute, Steve? I'm a little bit concerned that we're getting into an area talking about another council process in a very public arena. So I'm just a little bit nervous. I might take some guidance here from the Chief Executive.
Yeah, I also think that the point Councillor Coral's raising is one that we need to keep the Ratana people updated as well, because that's a criticism that we've had for some time. So we need to be putting any of this information clearly in that forum early before we go too far. So I think it's sort of a reflection on maybe we need to improve those processes of reporting back and doing something up to there, and take some of the feedback from those groups. So happy for the overall Poses and thinking to be wider than that, but there are some things that we need to tick off.
Yeah, and for those online, I'm not trying to hide anything here. I just, we're just weary that, if we're starting to talk about their discussions and Rafna's discussions, we need to make sure that we're talking to all parties at the right time.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I was just trying to make sure I'm on solid ground technically before I sort of
Yeah.
broadcast it to sort of community groups in particular. So we're almost there, but not quite. So certainly take people's advice as to when we put the foot down on sort of consultation stuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Mary.
Guys, councillors, I'm just aware we also have Ishwa and Peter in the room, that we're talking some around your areas. Through Arno, is there anything that you want to bring to our attention?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, definitely. I think the next portion is to allow Ishwa just to give you an update quickly on the buildings. Those would be the last two projects that I think would have some real attention in the room. So Ishwa, if you can just give us an update.
I'll start with the Martin offices. So we've had discussion with the ELT, and we are trying to prepare a very high level schedule at this point, right up to going for tender. So this pretty much involves where we frame requirements and sort out all of those workshops and then be ready to go for tender. So when we go for, it's a design and build tender, which is signed off. So when we go for design and build tender, the reality is when we did the design and when we did the design competition for this project sometime back, in that process, we had finalized team architects, and we've been working with them until this point to start designing this one. So they're already in the picture. And in the tender that was put out, there was a statement included where kind of said the chosen vendor will be awarded the design and will be awarded the design for a new build if the council decides to proceed. So in some ways, they are kind of in the picture, and even for us, we've had no issues working with them so far, and they've had all the knowledge of what we've done so far and all that. So we would prefer to stick with them. So what happens is in that process, when we go to the market, we'll have to see how we frame this in the tender, but it will likely be around nominating a design architect for that job, similar to what we did in the other project in Taihape. We had nominated a fire engineer. It'll be along those lines where we'll nominate team architects. So whoever comes through that contractor, whoever comes through that process will eventually go to team architects. So for a start, what we've done is we've brought them for initial discussion just to get them to manage the internal design workshops to frame that requirements, what we want to achieve with this building. We prefer it be done by an external party rather than me handling staff. I think it's just an easier, if for staff to have a conversation with an external party, I think it'll be more logical to have that discussion. So we've just had an initial discussion with team architects just to give us an offer of service to conduct those workshops. And we've done a very high level schedule on where we expect this to land. So we're looking at about 2 to 3 months. We've conservatively put 3 months there. And then depending on how we progress with those discussions, then we'll probably rework on the schedule. And this will be with the internal stakeholder group that was put in the project structure in that group. That's on the design side. Otherwise, we're still proceeding with our archaeological survey. We've engaged. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
I'll wait till this
Okay.
finish. That's it. I've got a question.
So the archaeological survey is happening. So we've engaged a consultant. So we've given him access to some of the property records and all that. So he's going through that. For a soil contamination survey, there was a survey conducted last week where WSP was on site taking soil samples from the plot. We've not got the test results yet. And there was also a underground scan that was done to detect those tanks. There was about 6 or 7 tanks that were detected, but at this point, we don't know whether they're tank. They're basically just electric signals that are sent through the ground, and then if there's any variance in that, it kind of detects what material it could be. So we're still waiting for those results. But we were told there are 2 areas where there's quite a strong signal. And interestingly, both those locations have a manhole on top. So we're still waiting for those final results to come through.
Logical that the manhole needs to go somewhere. Councillor Moore, I can get that, I'm not technical, mate.
I'm just getting back to T Market X, is that so technically we aren't in a design and build
It is
situation.
still a design and build. What happens
Does
is,
T Market X build?
no, in the sense, so it'll be led by a contractor. So the contractor will bring everybody else other than the architect. So in terms of HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and all of those services will be brought by the contractor, including his building capability. Only the architecture portion is a separable portion, but it will still be under the contractor. All that we're telling him is you don't have to look for an architect. This is the architect you will work with. It's that's the line we're
Councillor
working on.
Dalgety, Councillor Loud, and councillors, I'm going to take a break in about a minute's time. Councillor,
Just what's worrying me is that we don't really know where this council is gonna be at, so, you know, there's been discussions with other parties within Martin that might want to use this space, or, you know, or, you know, what do we look like in 5 years' time? And I just, that's making me really nervous.
take your point. Councillor Loud.
You mentioned we, as in when you're going through the design, but who's we? Can you define who we is?
Might be able to- Yeah, I might be able to just help you there because I wanted to just chip in. So we haven't, in that project structure, we identified an internal group of stakeholders to represent the staff. But as part of the requirements that Team Architects will pull together, they'll hold a workshop with council. They'll hold a workshop with Horizons, who have said that they want to be part of it to understand what their needs are. And anyone else we identify, including iwi. And if you're asking about we the other day, it was myself, Ishwa, and I met with Team Architects to go through our approach with them.
Yeah, I was just wondering who was in the space. Thank you.
Anything more on?
Nothing from me on that particular
Right.
project.
I might just call a halt here. Councillors will take a break for 15 minutes. Thank you very much. I adjourn. We'll come back to those online and around about 15 minutes. I didn't think it'd be that fast. Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, those online. I want to move to some of the recommendations here. So first of all, I have somebody move that the project management officer report be received. Thank you, councillor Dalgety. Councillor Morn. No, right, councillor Carter.
Sir Brian.
I was just picking a face. And those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you very much. We need to go through the town hall ones and representations, but before that, is there any other section of your report that you need to deal with? No, okay. We'll move to, if you could take us through, Ishmael, are you going to be handling this? If you take us through the project work plan and the relevant discussions there, town hall library redevelopment.
We've not altered this in much detail, except for the fact that we've just included section D where we've said critical touch points with council and TIHAPA user group, which is very similar to the discussions we've had on the design and build approach. So that's the only alteration that they've amendment that we have done to this report. And then we've included a project structure, which is very similar to we've done for the Martin offices building. I'm happy to answer questions if there's any.
Yeah, I'll open up questions, any potential amendments or alterations you're looking for. Councillor Duncan.
Sorry, can I just ask for clarification? Ishwa, you said that you've added D. Did you say D?
Yes.
What page is that?
That's on 116.
Yeah, can I just have a look at that before we go through them? Thank you. So I wasn't quite sure what, oh, I see what you mean. Yes, right, okay.
That's only touching
Those four
on.
touch points, yeah,
touch
which has been, yeah, fantastic, thank you. I did have something on page 110 at the top of the green section of that. Once again, it says strengthen the building to a minimum of 80% NBS, and elsewhere it says to
60.
strengthen between 67 and 80.
Yeah, that's 67 to 80 is what we're looking at.
So would you just amend that?
I could.
Yeah, that would be great, thank you.
Just, can you clarify what amendment are you looking for?
That it should say, it be consistent with the other mentioning of where we were going with that minimum of 67 to
67 to
80%
80%.
NBS, yeah.
67 to 80.
Yeah.
Okay.
Further, I did wonder.
Just hold on, can I just,
Sorry.
everybody's happy with that as an amendment? I don't want to re-debate it again later. No, carry on, please.
Just reading in the scope, at the top of page 11, I'm just wondering if, I know this is sort of just broad and it will be narrowed down, etc. But when it says, some of these things seem to me, for instance, knowing the building as I do, to be a bit of a double up and might be a compromise if people think they have to get all of these things in. For instance, the separate small staff meeting room for confidential conversations and the staff office for 6 people and the separate staff small kitchenette lunchroom potentially could all be the same space.
Yes. So this is something that we will have to logically look at, evaluate when and during the design concept stages. We'll all have that discussion at that point. So as much as possible, we will try and multi-function most of these spaces.
Thank you.
You finished?
There's one more thing.
Yes.
On page 113, this is what I was referring to some time ago when I wondered about, so it's halfway down the page. It's 4 points up from A, required suppliers. There, it says there are limited subcontractors located in TIHAPA.
Okay.
And I just would challenge that. I would really like that to be challenged because I mean, I don't know how much investigation has gone in around that, because I believe that there are people who are very capable plumbers, electrical and hydraulic specialists in Taihape, so.
To be fair, we've crossed that stage and there's a contract discussion.
Already in place.
So
Okay.
that's on a separate discussion. I think this will be part of that discussion.
Thank you.
I just point out page 9, the project objectives, where it says provide meeting and conference facilities to make Taihape a business hub in the region. That's within the existing facilities, isn't it? That's, I just don't want to see that as a driver to say we need a new function area. You know, that, for instance, when the resolutions were that we strengthen and make compliant, etc. We're not looking for another big new conference room venue.
No, but I think some of those we can have when we get further down into the design process.
Councillor Loudon.
I just on page
120.
well, no, out of scope, where's that? Page 111, out of scope, heritage improvements, it's not a heritage listable building, is it?
It's not.
It's got heritage improvements, will, the facade is what people generally want to keep like it is, you won't might lose that character of that facade.
So again, it's still open in the discussion, so there's no final decision on it yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, rather than getting down to the detail, that has to come later.
Further in detail. You can look at the broader picture heritage.
So that we're actually speaking to a motion here, would somebody like to put on recommendation 2 on and move that with or without? It would have to be with, because of I've got 2 fingers that are dropping and loading. Who wants to fire the shot? Councillor Duncan,
Yes, I would like to move that. Thank you, with amendment,
as amended.
as
And the
amended.
amendment would include the new building standard, NBS rating.
Yes, just so that's consistent. I'm not
Do you wish
changing.
to second that? Councillor Duncan, do you wish to speak to it? But there's nobody wanting to move any further amendments. You're speaking, you don't want to speak to it?
I can speak to it, just that, that NBS has been noted twice in the document. We've had a lot of discussion. I just want to be consistent.
Well, loosely, or we agreed with your amendment there.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? Right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. In terms of recommendation 3, this is the makeup of the recommendation that His Worship the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillor from the Northern Ward be appointed as governance representatives on this project. I would need a name.
Seeking to recommend councillor Duncan if she would be available to make herself for that.
Chafe a little bit for.
The first question is, would you accept?
Yes, I would accept, but can I speak?
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm asking for taking questions at this stage as well. Yeah.
Well, obviously I'm the best choice. But I would, no, but I would say that, because of the diversity in the coverage, with specifically in the importance of this to the community, I wonder if it wouldn't be of value, to have both councillor Wong and myself. And I understand that the more people you have, the clunkier it gets, but also the quality that you will get will be higher. So I'm wondering if it would be worth it.
Jeffrey, and you wish to speak?
I'm supportive of that idea.
we haven't got to that stage yet. Are you wishing to move that, or somebody wishing to move that? No, it's councillor Wilson's motion.
Your Worship, if councillor Wong was interested and the committee at the table were in favour, I would amend the motion to include both of those names.
Would you be interested?
Playing second fiddle?
Yeah. The staff, would this create any difficulties for you if both councillors were on the panel for the group?
I doubt. I haven't come prepared for this question, but
Hard to control this thing. Remember what the governance reps are on there for, which is on 121, is receiving regular in-depth project updates, regular meetings with sponsor and project management. Whoever comes from that northern ward is going to be interested in that, even if you've only got 2 reps on it anyway.
Yes.
Others are want to know. So it's just a matter of numbers, really. And so I don't think we've got any issue with who's on there.
So we haven't got a seconder, by the way, to this motion. That are you wishing to second, councillor?
I'll second it.
You'll second, so councillor Sharlin's seconding. So do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I do, and I just wish to point out, if you read the motion carefully, there's appointed as governance representatives. To me, that is a conduit between the team led by Ishwa. Some of the feedback that I've heard from councillor Duncan in that earlier amendment, picking up on those sorts of things, that's the level that we might just step into, or the idea of some of those rooms, say, well, hey, how can we do that? We're not the doers of this project. We're not tasked with doing, the key word being governance representatives and the conduit between our council table and our PMO office that may want to just bounce an idea off and say, hey, we're thinking about this. Do you think that could work? Clearly with the 2 northern councillors having feet on the ground up there, I think that's important. So that's all I would say to what this recommendation is.
Councillor Maughan, did you wish to speak? Or were you, was there a
I'm
question?
speaking for it, but not with doubt, but with the proviso, it is a governance role. I know how passionate Councillor Duncan, Councillor Wong are about the project, and they might have their ideas about what should be in the building and what shouldn't. But that's a governance role, and any decisions on what goes in the building comes back to full council anyway, doesn't it? And through the project management.
Yeah, I'll come to you in a second. I'll go councillor.
I'd like to speak for, but I'd also like to point out that councillors Duncan and Wong should be a conduit to other councillors within the room to update us on a regular basis as to how it's going, where it's going, and but in their governance role.
It's a good, it comes with the role, even for those that are second fiddle. I'll go to councillor Wong first, then back to the chief executive.
Just a comment for councillor Loudon and others. There's another person on the representative, and that is His Worship the Mayor, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would, the comment from the chief executive, then if anybody wants to speak against this motion, I'll take that.
I was going to make the same points that others are making. Remember, the governance reps are the mayor, the chair of assets and infrastructure, and the northern reps, whoever they are. But remember, there's a stakeholder group as well, which is putting some of the issues. So I do agree with the deputy mayor that this is still a governance role, and some of what you are talking about, I think, is going to be in that external stakeholders anyway. And that Taihape user group is down there. So that advocacy will come up. But you're more likely to get other higher level stuff at the governance level than getting down to that may be how it's working, how the external stakeholders work, rather than the detail.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? Right, a reply.
Don't believe it's required, your worship.
Vote those in favour. Those against, carried. Thank you very much.
Excuse me,
What I might do, sorry,
sorry, your worship, I'll just see, on page 120, there's a whole lot of staff names there that are unlikely to be on that project team.
Yeah, all of it needs.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
right, I'll return us, if we go back on the agenda, please, to 10.2. We've kept staff member waiting for some considerable time. So there wasn't anything else I had to handle in PMO, was there?
18 pounds.
79.
While Trina's getting organised, would somebody like to receive the report on drones? Thank you, councillor Carter and councillor Sharlin. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Please, dazzle us with drones.
Thank you, your worship. I'm here today to present the drones policy to council and request council adopt it. Effectively, the reason why we need a drones policy is as a landowner, we need to be able to give permission or not for people to fly their drones over our spaces. So that's effectively what the drone policy does. It outlines where permission is granted, where permission is not granted, a process for giving permission for areas that aren't specifically provided for, and provides a code of conduct and a bit of education around the CAA rules. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm happy to go to recommendation too.
We've been through this, so you're wishing to move? Looking for a seconder to it. Councillor Ricard was seconding. But councillors, I need to give you the opportunity to ask for any questions on the report, and we're anything further that the officer wishes to highlight. No. You wish to speak to it?
Only that we've had this in front of us and had quite a bit of discussion about it during previous workshops. I think the report that we've just heard from staff is in our order paper, and the explanation that we've just heard clearly covers the reasons why we need it. And I think it's just a formality that needs to be tidied up, nothing more.
Okay. Any other speakers? In that case, I won't give you a right reply for yourself, but put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you.
All that time for that.
Oh, dear.
10.3, the adoption of the Rangitikei District Council waste assessment. Who's going to take us through that? It's me. How about we receive it first? Thank you, councillor Duncan. Councillor Wong, those in favour? Those against? Carried, please.
Thank you, your worship. We are in the process of creating our own waste management and minimisation plan. Part of the process to get that done is we first have to create our own waste assessment, and according to legislation, that assessment, the waste assessment, needs to be approved by the Department of Health. So we've had that done, completed, and it also needs to be endorsed by our council. So if you can remember, about a month ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, we had Tonkin and Taylor at a workshop discuss what's in the waste assessment, and we've attached it just to remind you what was in there. And today, all that today is about is to say that we've created it, it's been endorsed by the Department of Health, and for council then to endorse that. And then we'll move on with creating the new WMMP.
Any questions? Nothing. Feel like we've taken the light out from under your eyes or something. Does anybody wish to move recommendation 2?
So moved.
Councillor Carter, Councillor Loudon seconding. You wish to speak to it? Put to the vote, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, carry.
Thank you.
Well, 10.4. This is the redirection of approved better off funding to support the transition, etc. You taking us through that? The people sector.
Yes, so this is the government asking as to whether any of the better off funding that has been allocated could be better to be redirected to Three Waters as opposed to going through the proposals. So on page 100, there are some options to be considered as to where those could be spent. The obvious one would be the Taihape Town Hall, where you've got the 1.8 million. So that could be redirected if you so chose to something like the Martin Water. However, if you do any of that for significant figures, I just need to point out that that would take a cash grant and put it into the waters, which will then go with a CCO. And we would need to borrow that 1.8 for you. So I still think personally that you've committed to projects which are basically being spent. There are some that have been identified from Katrina that could be directed from the district plan acceleration program to water related things. And there is also the housing one that has the potential to have some unspent money that could go. But all those options are there. And if you follow your way through the recommendations, I'm happy to answer any questions as to, I don't know whether Mary Andy has a view on the Taihape. A risk would be that at some stage, if there's unspent better off funding, it could be reclaimed by the government. That is a potential risk. Is it likely? I personally don't think so, but everybody will have different views on that. And so that's the risk.
Let's just first of all receive the report, so pick up the boxes. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Carter moving secondly that receive the report, those in favour. Those against, carried, thank you. I might open it up for general questions around the report first. Councillor Delgado.
I just assume around with this project that there's quite, is it like other projects, there's quite strict timelines?
Which project?
Most of our projects.
These.
Is there, so there's no timelines that we've got to meet with this, and then my question is, you know, we have struggled to have our capital spend. So, you know, are they on track with what we proposed when we asked for that money at this stage?
That's my understanding. If you look at page 97, go through them, the business case for housing is specified in there that there could be some unspent for that. The development of climate change, that's completed. District plan is committed, but what Katrina has said in here is there's a potential to say that some of it is directed because the district plan covers the expansion of infrastructure like the water and stuff like that. So you could say that some of that district plan work is focused on water infrastructure. The flood.
Yeah, I can give you an update. So that should be completed by end of July.
So that's about to be completed.
Yeah.
Hautapa River Parks, as we know, is underway. That they're unlikely not to spend that, so that's committed. The Taihape Exhibit Centre is the one that I've talked about. Some of that is spent, but that's your biggest spend. The regeneration is I think that's technically overspent. Is that what it's saying?
No.
450 bucks. I thought it was 400. Yeah, so that's started and committed, and the Marae Rangatiki, that's underway as well. So there's not a whole lot of possibilities of redirection. And remember, we haven't got those huge sums that others have got.
Can I just ask a question around that? So the district plan acceleration, 427,000, only 69,000 of that has been spent. And that seems to be, when I look on page 99 at 4, following further considerations, note that initial 127,000 of funding can be ring-fenced. The funding will be used, The remainder of this funding is already contracted, therefore there's no funding remaining for a reallocation. Are you telling me that 427,000 in the district plan acceleration fund is contracted?
I think that's, we might be confusing it by saying it's contracted. We have Tiffany as the staff member who is employed to do that work. And there's a journal entry that happens to take the money for the Better Off Fund to pay for her salary. So, so she's been employed for the 3 years. Yeah.
All right, so, yeah, I accept that, but I just wanted
Yeah, it's not
clarification that
contract.
there's no further contract, outside contract.
They may, like, in the work that Tiffany's actually undertaking, she may require some, I think it was engineering reports for infrastructure and things like that, that we have committed to
Yep.
and already done so that she can do her district plan review.
Okay, you can see my
Yeah.
cause for questioning here. Councillor Moore on questions.
Yeah, the High Happy Civic Centre 1.8, it would be pretty stupid to reallocate that. Wouldn't we, considering you're gonna pay, you've still gotta.
I have my view on it, but
Yeah, so essentially, if you reallocated that,
You still have to fund it.
you'd have to fund it, whereas, and you, yeah, and the loan would be passed through to, if it was Three Waters anyway.
So that was my question as well. So we would have to loan fund that, we'd have to debt fund that, and we haven't put that position in our long-term plan, so would that stall the whole project until we can, would it change, it would change our rating position?
but I think think of your own position. So that 1.8 is at the moment is a gift and a grant.
Yes.
And in the moment that gift and grant would end up in the Three Waters CCO or whatever that looks like. And the 1.8 borrowed would be on our sheet, our balance sheet.
Can I ask staff, in terms of additional protection around the government moving to take this money away? As we have an active project, we seem to have, companies involved with that. Can we forward spend that 1.8 in some way?
Well, we are now, there is some expenditure going to that now, so you could commit that to being the spend as it goes.
First, yeah.
Or first spend.
Yeah, because I think I take a contrary view to the chief executive. It wouldn't surprise me if the minister moved quickly and said, look, we've given you an opportunity to save this money for Three Waters, you're not taking it, it's gone.
On the financial point of view, we could only pay money to a third party if there was some sort of document requesting payment, typically known as an invoice. Invoices are normally for work already completed. If we were to get a payment request from a contractor for $500,000 to prepay costs, a staff member would have to approve that. At that level, it would either be the CEO or come to council. And if that was investigated, we could expect the question, why would you prepay $500,000 to a contractor for work that's not been done yet? So whoever approved that payment, and it might be council, if you'd be comfortable with that, we could request it. But then the buck would stop with you.
Some of this money's soon go, as soon as that contract is awarded, then you're gonna be starting spending it.
How, my question would be, how long do we think it would take us to spend 1.8 million on that project?
Tomorrow.
In a normal role of,
Well, no, there would have to be a contract with somebody else, and what I might do is, we're in position where we're gonna have to discuss contracts at some stage. So I may even recess us for a minute and go into public excluded so that the chief executive can update us on where that current negotiations sit. I'll let you have a think about that, whether you'd like to do that.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, we could do it as part of the action items.
Yeah.
And the public excluded if that's easy.
Would you want that before there was some of these recommendations though? Or are you comfortable though?
I'm happy.
Okay,
I
well,
think
I'm
as part of this is that, I know it's a critical debate, but it's a matter of determining a risk, which is what you're talking about, and a possible loss of that 1.8 funding stream.
Well, look, first of all, the recommendation 2 is we need to acknowledge the invitation from the Department of Internal Affairs. We need to be on record of having received it and acknowledging it. I'm prepared to move on that basis, recommendation 2. Councillor Dougherty, you're happy to second. Any questions? I think I've discussed that one enough. We need to be on record of having received this. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Recommendation 3.
It's just that recommendation 3 is again, just for noting, is remember you got some dollars for transitional funding that is now finished, and so that your costs of transitional funding, we're acknowledging here that we're taking that on.
Yeah, so this is acknowledging there is no budget in that space, but there will be a cost, and it's that straightforward, isn't it?
It is, it's just in.
I'm happy to move to that. Councillor Wilson seconding. Any questions or?
A question?
Yes.
Have we got any idea of the level of that?
No, but this is the thing that we were debating before when we was talking about water, is how much do you want to play in that? And a lot of, even some of that funds that we're putting in now is not actually coming out of transitional fund, it's our time. And that will continue.
And the size of it may vary according to the number of people also involved in this space. Yes, Councillor Moore.
Clarification on that. It says that the debt payable would be by the joint arrangement.
Well, that's.
Would that be that party with the debt? They're
That's
saying that it'd sit with council, but the way I read that is that
That's what
it's.
they're trying to say is that if the organisation itself was to create a debt, but remember you're nowhere near that just right at the moment.
Okay, it's quite complex, isn't it, really?
It is.
I don't want to push on if you're not comfortable.
Oh, I'm just trying to get my head around whether, you said it's council, but then in the recommendation, it says it'd be by the joint arrangement, by joint arrangement. And it seems to me that it would, it's either sitting with council or it's sitting with the.
That's informing the joint arrangement.
Go to Mr. Toombs.
Okay, yeah, so as part of the transition, we will incur staff time and external dollar costs. We'll incur them, they'll be recorded by us in coming up with the joint arrangement. The cost will be recorded as a water related cost. So even though we'll debt fund them in the first instance, that should be added to our water related debt that we think will be repaid once we go to the joint arrangement.
Until the government
We're carrying the debt till we join the new organisation, and
there's no guarantee.
Hopefully the debt will.
You're comfortable now?
We didn't, I think it wanted to be clear that this is going to be some costs as well.
Yeah. Look, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. I'm not particularly sure that this recommendation is actually needed. But the recommendation that council also acknowledges the high community profile for its approved Better Off funding projects. There's a high profile on virtually everything we do, in my mind. What they're saying is, the staff are saying that, we have publicised the Better Off funding these are the things we're going to do with it, including the town centre, etc. So there's some validity in it. It doesn't drive anything other than just noting. But if somebody would like to move it, you're wanting to move it. Councillor Rakawa, are you wanting to second it or you want to? Are there any questions? It's a statement, not an action, really.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Now we start to come to the nitty gritty. Recommendation 5, that council notes the business case for housing projects is largely complete with one invoice yet to come, meaning up to 28,000 is unspent, and agrees to ask Internal Affairs to either to include the sum in the new funding agreement to support transition costs for water infrastructure, or to consider this sum for substitution into the Better Off funding project with any other associated change of scope. For instance, you could put it into further money into this plan, for example. And my preference would be to put it into the funding agreement to support transition costs. It's not a huge sum of money, and you will chew out more than that sum of money in this space, believe me. So I'll move that to include the sum, etc. Is there a seconder to that? You're happy to second? This is supporting the government's direction, and we need to be able to demonstrate that, but at least with some project. And this is money we're going to have to spend. Any other questions or speakers?
So initially we were going to be funded for the transition into the three waters. And now obviously the new government has said that's not going to happen. So we're going to actually create an account to help cover that transition. This will be a new sum of money that will be set aside, and potentially there'll be other fund monies that might come out of it as well. We'll be able to put in as well. Is that what
We'll have to put it
We'll need
We
to
will.
pay, certainly.
because, yeah,
We need to fund it.
right.
But even if we don't go into an agreement with anybody else, we will still need to fund a transition process.
Mary, what the point that Mary Andy's making is this supports what the government's doing by
Yes.
saying we are allocating some funds to the Better Off transition process.
Makes sense.
Everybody looks a little bit, anybody not sure about what's being done here? All right, I'll put it to the vote. I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 6, that council agrees that the preparation of 3 water assessments within the Better Off funding district plan. Hang on, let's read this again. That council agrees that the preparation of the 3 waters assessments within the Better Off funding district plan acceleration program can be ring fenced, and that Internal Affairs be asked to advise.
So what I think the district plan people are saying is some of that within the district plan is related to water. So at the moment, it's just called district plan acceleration. So you could legitimately say that although this is part of the figure that's been given to that, that is being spent on 3 waters, and therefore what extra things do we need to supply?
This is effectively trying to protect the district plan money. And I question, there's no report here saying how much of the district plan, of the budget of the district plan would be associated with 3 waters. I'm struggling a little bit.
Well, it is there in option 7.1C. says that the estimated can be ring fenced, so they'd get out what, they'd determine what that technical work is. And it is contributing to improve Three Waters infrastructure.
We don't know what scale of that is or not. And is this a
Yes. Well, that was what, was being spoken about, was the money that was already allocated to the particular staff member was some, and there would be a balance of that technical work.
So I've just had clarification from Katrina. So in 4.1, if we refer you to that, so that's that 127,000 that can be ring fenced for the water investment in terms of the district plan work.
That's the scale of the work that would need to be done around Three Waters.
Yes.
That's the scale of work within the project that's been done for Three Waters.
So what Katrina's saying is that we could say to the DIA that we will ring fence 127,000 from that fund, and it will be used in relation to Three Waters.
So when we're talking of the fund, if you go to that 400 and something thousand from the district plan acceleration,
Yes.
less 69,000.
Yes.
So it takes you to what, 370,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Of that money, are you saying that we can ring fence it? Or are you saying that you're going to take money from some other fund and add it and ring fence
No,
it?
just
no,
ring
it's
fencing
within that
ring fence,
account?
yes, yes.
I'd support that.
And I think that's what this recommendation
right.
6 is trying to say.
It's always been part of the district plan acceleration proposal to do that infrastructure work.
Yeah.
And all it is saying to the government, part of what is in there is being spent on Three Waters.
Yeah.
So do we put the figure in, put a figure in? to make it clear?
I think that you'd want to detail that it is coming out of that section
Yes.
and ring fenced within it. Because otherwise, you know, where are you going to take it from?
And I think you're right, so that's, it could have been worded differently, but it's saying to Internal Affairs that we will ring fence that much money out of that for Three Waters, and if there's any additional reporting requirements that they want to see or proof, then we can provide them.
So that's it there.
Yeah.
I'm feeling more comfortable. Councillor,
Sorry, I'm understanding the money bit, but can you just, for clarity, explain, what in the district plan acceleration, why we need Three Waters stuff in there? What will that actually
So,
refer to?
My understanding of it is a lot to do with the residential and the expansions, I think the industrial expansion, so it needs infrastructure.
Right.
So, what does that new growth require in terms of infrastructure? Some of that is water,
I
either
think,
wastewater,
got it.
stormwater.
councillor,
Question. So we're going to ring fence the 127,000.
Yeah.
However, going back to the fact that that funding is also covering the employment of a staff member, how does that work?
That's the balance of that specific
Yeah.
work that she's saying is directed totally to Three Waters. That may be some staff time, but my understanding of this was some engineering work as well. It's a major component. Whatever that work is, it will be an assessment of what requirement for the Three Waters would be in doing that district plan acceleration. These are growth areas. What technical expertise do we need to say what size of pipes are, what the catchment area is, that sort of thing.
councillor Allen,
With recommendation 6, do you need that figure in there? My feeling is not, that is a separate conversation with.
Yeah, well, the only thing is I don't know why it's not in there, but it is declared over in when it said it was the 127, which is where I picked it up from. So I thought flexibility in there might have been better because I'm not quite sure what that was going to be, but by declaring it, you're actually putting a figure to it, which probably the government would prefer, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they would want a figure.
You would think so.
And I've highlighted that section separately because I wasn't sure where it was going to come out of. That was my issue. So taking it out of that district plan acceleration and putting it, ring fencing it within it is what's happening.
It's clarifying where the funds are and where.
Yeah. So on that basis, I'd be happy to support it. There'll be another issue that comes up in a minute though. So I will move recommendation 6. Are you happy to second?
Are you gonna put figure in or?
Yes, it must include the figure.
Yeah. Well done.
Would you say that can start at the figure of $127,000 because potentially you're asking Internal Affairs to advise of any additional reporting, which means it could be more than that.
Yeah.
But are you restricting
Doesn't,
that 127?
in my view, it doesn't actually matter because
No.
what they've said is they've given us the 427K. What we're saying is part of that 427K, 127 it is doing water stuff. So it's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
clarifying.
And if,
You think of where the government's coming from, what it'll be wanting to say is this amount of money we have now spent on improving water.
Yes.
so they've got 150,000 transferred back with the
So
28 that's the previous thing. Is there any other speakers or questions around that? I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Can we just scroll down, please? Now, what I questioned then is whether we want, or whether it's politically advisable, or that there's a whole lot of other money that we are not transferring, including, for instance, the Tai Happy Centre. Do you want to refer to those to say that the balance of the better off funding will remain with the existing program?
It's commissioned.
Do you see what I'm getting at here? Advice from staff around the sensitivity of this. Do you not refer to it all? Or do you stipulate that the rest of it will fall within the existing agreement?
Well, whatever way, if you're doing that, you're just declaring transparently that that's what you're doing. If you don't have anything there, then obviously that is what you're doing as well. So whichever way, if you're wanting to make it transparent and clear in our reply back to them, having that resolution probably worthwhile.
My feeling is probably to do it. Councillor Loudon?
My feeling is to do it too, and it's in our long-term plan, like without the targeting funding, it's sitting there, and that's the most important thing, it's in the long-term plan, and that's committed to that project.
Mike Payne, can you work on it, mate?
I agree that we should have it in there. But being a cynic, the government wants it back, they'll take it back.
Yeah, and we can at least say we've considered it and we've passed the motion. So,
Yeah, I also agree, but it's not only that it's in our long-term plan, it actually advanced the project and I believe enabled us to push on some other water-related projects because of that.
so it could be that the council agrees that the council agrees that the balance of the
So I'm just suggesting that the council advise internal affairs that the remaining balance of funding approved in the better off allocation is to be retained for projects already committed.
I wouldn't say that you advise them. That's the advice for our community. If they want to chase us, they chase us. Advising them that we're going to retain money might be red rag to it. So the council agree that the balance of the better off funding following the resolutions under today's order paper section, whatever it is. Be retained as per the agreement under Better Off funding. If that makes sense.
Could say as per the agreement with, as DIA.
Yeah, under Better Off funding. Better Off funding agreement with Internal Affairs.
10.4.
Recommendation 7, so it follows 5 and 6.
Yeah. Look, does somebody want to move that? If not, I will.
Council, sorry, your worship, I just think councillor Duncan raised a good point, and she said as committed. With the committed funds, and that word was in there, I think it gives a little bit more.
Yeah.
I just picked up on what you said.
Yeah,
I think
you
that's
might want
valid.
to, as committed under our long-term plan.
Can I just give you a finance perspective of that? Committed in the finance world normally means you've got a purchase order for it. So we've agreed in principle to spend this money on these projects, but they're not financially committed yet.
We are committed.
Yeah.
We're committed for the projects, but the expenditure is not committed yet. Just slight terminology.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but
You could like as committed in there.
As the projects are committed, the expenditure is not committed yet. This is what I'm making.
Can I just ask a question on that? So some of these tasks, we actually have companies working on it, on an agreed.
If there's a contract, it's committed, yeah. If there's not a contract, it's not committed yet.
yeah, council agreed
That
with
was
the
the
last
Town
Better Off
Town
funding
Hall, that's
for
pretty much committed, isn't
as-
it? Because we'd have to go. We couldn't.
And-
borrow that
and-
money,
and-
we'd have to go back to the
And
drawing board.
approved within our long-term plan, just needs.
Yeah, that's good.
Look, I'll move that.
Yes.
Cool. Have I got, somebody else to stand up beside me before? Councillor. Councillor Lau.
Well done, Nick.
We've done that before. Oh, buddies.
Any questions? I think we've been through it. I'll put it to the
Again,
vote.
I hate to be pedantic, but can we say council's annual plan and or long-term plan? Because some of these budgets won't be in the long-term plan. Because we don't know what this year's,
Long-term plans, full stop.
or annual plan, they're in this year's annual plan.
Yeah.
But until we know how much we've received, they're not in the long-term plan.
We could put it within council
Yeah.
planning documents. if we
Council
want to.
budgets, approved budgets.
Council approved.
Well, yeah.
I think I've said all of that, so I'll move that. Put it to vote, those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you. Where do we have to go back to now?
Number 12, no, page 127.
Minutes from committees, is that?
Yes.
Oh, I'm hoping that somebody will wish to receive these as a block.
Happy to move as a block, your worship.
Have we a seconder to that? Councillor Duncan seconding it.
Yes.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we have some recommendations from committees.
Yes.
One, let's deal with them in order. One,
Move they be received.
yep. Thank you. Seconded? Thank you. Those in favour? Recommendation 2, that council approves or does not approve the carry forward of up to $1,253.40 for the Turakina Community Committee for the 24-25 year. Councillor Carter moving, Councillor Wilson seconding.
Approves.
Those in favour? Those against, as approved. Recommendation 3, that council approves or does not approve the carry forward of $686.64 for for the Hunterville Community Committee from 24-25 year.
Second.
Councillor Dalgety and Councillor Rakawa. Those in favour? To my eye.
Right.
Recommendation, next one, that council approves or does not approve carry forward of 667-19 for the Martin Community one. I think it'd be tough if we did everybody else's and didn't do that. Councillor Wilson, Councillor. Actually, Charlene will go for. Those in favour? Yeah, let's not do the tie one. The council approves or does not approve the carry forward of up to 4,718 for the.
Way too much.
Now, this raises the question. And this would be more than the annual allocation last year. The others, I think, are within it. So my understanding of the rules is that you can carry forward 1 year, not 2 years. We did 2 years specifically as an exemption for COVID. So what's the total amount of? You may wish to disregard this, but I have to advise you of the principles.
So Kitty was just advised their balance is more than 5,000 per year.
Yeah, so the annual allocation is a lot
Okay, so,
So it's one.
so 1 year would be within regulations. Councillor Duncan, are you wishing to move? To carry forward?
Yes. I can give clarification too if you want it. Yes, please. My, having been at that meeting, and Councillor Wong may want to comment as well, I believe that the workshop that was carried out on these figures was not as thorough as the members of the committee would have liked. And in fact, this does include still some accounting for funds that have been committed, but they've left it in this amount because they haven't been spent, but they are already committed. That was my understanding at the meeting. Your Worship, you were at that meeting, you might recall that. I think that the accounting could have been improved upon. So when it says, it's not because that fund is just sitting there floating around, they haven't done anything. It's just that they haven't spent it yet. And not all of it, but some of it is actually still is committed funds.
Committed.
So it looks worse than it is, that's what I'm trying to say.
So you're wishing to move?
I am.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Wong, I thought you might be there. It's gonna live with you now. Put to the vote, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you. Now I go to 14. This is the resolution to move into public excluded. You wish to so move? Thank you, councillor Wong is seconding. Those in favour for the reasons given. Does, just before you do that, does there anybody wish to dispute the reasons given? This one should be pretty straightforward today. I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. But it's not a bad practice to actually give you the opportunity to say no.